Hey everybody, my name is Bo Sanders. I want to thank you for watching these little 5-minute videos and for sharing them so widely. I really am enjoying the conversation. Today I want to talk to you about modifiers and specifically the word Christian. Normally I'm not a fan of modifiers at all. I'm deeply suspicious of any time somebody puts a modifier on something. For instance, if somebody references a female comedian, I think, that's weird. You didn't call Jerry Seinfeld a male comedian. So there's something about that needs to be attended to and definitely kept track of. Or like Randy is a Native American theologian, but no one calls me a white theologian. So it's that sort of stuff that you have to account for and attend to, because as the registers go, anytime that you are noting or modifying something, there's something going on there and it needs to be examined. The worst one is biblical. When people say something is biblical, my hackles go up and I go, oh, that's probably not true. For instance, when people talk about biblical marriage, there are like 9 kinds of marriages in the Old and New Testament. And I've heard as many as 30, but 15 is, I've seen people talk about 15 types of marriages in the Bible. So you cannot, the idea that there's a biblical marriage, excuse me, is a fiction. It's a social imaginary. It's like when people talk about a biblical worldview, I just think, oh, you have to be kidding me. There are at least 6 worldviews represented in the Hebrew and Christian Testaments. So whatever you think you're talking about in the biblical worldview, but of course people will try and insist that Scripture speaks with one continuous voice, and it's just a fiction. It's a complete fabrication, unfortunately. I wish that was true, but if you actually take time to read the Scriptures, there are 6 different periods where different worldviews are in place. But I have found one exception. There is one thing that I actually find helpful in the 21st century, which is to talk about Christian as a modifier. So obviously we have Christian bookstores and Christian universities and Christian radio stations, and right, that's fine, and we can talk about that. But when it comes to politics, I actually find the modifier Christian helpful, and let me tell you why. In my travels, and as I get to talk with different groups and I get to be in conversation with different people, I am finding that there are motivations underneath the surface that if you are not part of that subgroup, unless you are an insider, you can't, as an outsider, imagine the nuance within a certain perspective. So as I talk to some of my conservative friends, there's one type of conservatism that you might have access to through media sources, but when that conservatism is motivated out of a Christian perspective, it does take on a little bit of a different tone. And so I want to acknowledge that, and I want to account for that and attend to it, because there's something going on that isn't the large perspective, the majority perspective, but it's being motivated out of a deeper place, and it's worth noting. That's all I'm saying. It's the same for liberals or progressives. There's a motivation there that, most of the Christians I know who would identify as liberal or progressive, they are motivated by Christian love. And so it's not an anything goes, whatever you want, kind of an anarchy hedonism. There is a Christian motivation that says that each individual person, their perspective and their experience are valid locations for reflection and support. So, when people paint with a broad brush against liberals or progressive, I understand that it can be made into a caricature. I'm just saying that my experience has been there's something else going on at a much deeper level. And libertarians. So the example that has really brought this to mind in the last couple of weeks is I know Christian libertarians who actually want a government shutdown. They are excited about a government shutdown. And if you're not an insider in that group, you may think, what? That doesn't make any sense. But it's actually because of their view of the church, their ecclesiology. They actually think that one of the reasons people are so dependent on the government is because the church hasn't been doing the church's job. And that the government shutdown is a chance for the church to be the church And so they don't mind it at all. They're sort of hoping for a government shutdown because then the church would have an opportunity to step up and do what it should have been doing all along. Now, when I've shared that with people who are not part of that libertarian perspective, who are conservative or progressive liberal, they're always baffled, like, what? That doesn't, if you had locked me in a room and given me a week to come up with motivation for a government shutdown, I wouldn't have come up with that. And that's because you're not an insider. So this is why I think that Christian, especially when it comes to politics, may be the one time, it is my one exception, where I think it's helpful to note it. And so there are obviously things you cannot justify as a Christian. Like, as much as I try, I can't figure out a Christian rationale for the Second Amendment. For conservatives, sure, but don't tell me it's Christian. And there's things on the liberal side as well. But I just wanted to share this one thing and to hear your thoughts and to get your perspective. Is this helpful? Does it resonate with you? Let me know.